Okay, so this is all dry on here, so we're ready to go on to the next step, which is to give this the wood texture, this fallen log. So one thing I want to talk about is after this dried on here, I decided the base was a little big, so I just cut a little bit of the edges off. Always the nice thing about working with a light material like matting board or heavy cardboard is that you can, trim something down as you're working on it. You couldn't really do that with hardboard or MDF or something like that, so keep that in mind. So anyway, what we're going to do is we're going to apply our caulking to this, which is going to give it its nice wood texture in the end. So it's going to look like that. Well, this is going to look so messy going on that you're going to think I've lost my mind, and you're going to think I'm leading you astray as a terrain maker, and I promise I'm not. It's going to go on messy, but we're going to make something of it. So anyway, you get your caulking gun in there, and what you want to start doing is just applying it all over your log. What I'm going to try not to do is to get a lot. You see there's a little flexibility in there, that's fine. I'm going to try not to get a lot on the base and off the log, off the tin foil. If that does happen, not the end of the world. I want a generous amount so I can craft this and work with it, but not so much that I end up with too much of a mess. It's going to be a mess, but not too much of a mess. It's a controlled mess. I think that's a good expression for terrain making in general, a controlled mess in many cases. Some people approach it like it's a science. I think you got to kind of approach it like it's an art. So this is not at all looking like a log. Looks like a lot of squirty lines, doesn't it? This thing's going to come together for us. Oh, it's going to be awesome. So I'm basically covering this up. I want enough material to work with, so I don't want to leave a lot of the foil showing underneath this stuff for now. Although we're going to be able to craft it into the crevices and work with it the way we need to work with it, etc. Alright, so I got a nice covering. I'll put a little more up there. I got a nice covering on there right now of the caulking. You see, I really haphazardly applied it, and that's fine, because what's going to happen is we are going to, sorry, I'm off camera for a second. We are going to smooth this down. So what we're going to do is we're going to take just a regular old butter knife or whatever knife you have laying around. You can do this with a popsicle stick. And I'm going to smooth this down, okay, onto our log, okay, and make sure that I've got a nice covering. Now I realize I've got the white matting board, so I'm white on white here, and I apologize. I know that doesn't make it easy for you to make out what's happening. But the bottom line is like here, where the tin foil is still showing, we got to move our caulking down into that area. And I still want to maintain the round nature of this this stuff. You can already see though it's starting to take shape. Alright, and so the bottom line is we don't want to leave any of that tin foil showing, because we need to convincingly change this into a log, and showing metal, revealed metal, is not going to be very convincing for a log. So anyway, I'm just working this in and covering it up. Okay, I've got kind of a cavity in here at the end where I wanted this to look like a hollow out trunk. I want to make sure I get some good stuff in there too. Okay, so basically at this point I've covered my log. All right, now this is too smooth right now to really represent a log. So what you're going to do, very simply, to give it a wood-like texture, is to grab a toothpick, okay, or two or three, and you'll see why I use more than one probably, and start to carve in kind of your wood texture. Alright, and so what I'm doing is going the width of the piece, the lines in the way that the bark would run. Get a little closer in here. I am running and creating these lines that represent the bark of the tree. This is so easy to get a nice effect very quickly. Okay, this material is wonderful to work with too, because it's totally sculptable, but it only takes a good couple hours to really dry if you've got some decent warmth, room temperature, you know. So now I've got a couple spots here where there's still some tinfoil showing that are very close to the surface. Not too worried about that, because when I go in with my ground texture, it's going to cover that up. The bottom line is you wouldn't want any transparent or bald spots up high on this thing where it would look too smooth with the revealed metal later on. So you just go in there. Now the stuff builds up on your toothpick, so when that happens you can wipe off your toothpick, or you can just switch to another toothpick and continue covering in those lines. Now I also like kind of some knot holes on here. Okay, I'll show you one here. So I kind of made that knot hole. All right, this was really easy. This is also using a toothpick. What you're going to do is, get this off camera, you are going to get a little extra caulking, which actually is easy because a lot of times when you're done caulking, a little bit still oozes out of your gun, and that's what I just grabbed. And pick a spot where you want kind of a knot hole to be. This would be like where a branch had broken off. And add a little extra material. Okay, so I've added a little extra material there. Let me zoom in on that. Okay, so I've added a little extra material, kind of a lump of material. Hopefully you can see it. Actually, let me point to it. Right there's a lump, right, where I don't have lines etched in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of go in there. I'm just going to kind of work a hole. Now a lot of times where a branch is broken off and you get a knot hole, you get kind of like some scarring around the edge. You get kind of a ring of material around the edge, and that's what I'm kind of sculpting in with the toothpick. So this is really easy, but quickly we've got kind of this effect. So again, just make sure before this dries, and you've got a good half an hour to 45 minutes where this is still fairly pliable. Make sure you like the way your bark looks. You know, etch those lines in. And make sure you've got good coverage from your caulking, and finish this up, and yeah, before you know it, you're gonna have an awesome looking fallen tree. So let me get that back on camera. And so that's gonna take a couple hours to dry. Of course, I'm not gonna have you sit here and watch that happen. So we're gonna I'll turn off the camera, and when the time is dry, I'll come back and talk about the next step. But that is how simple making a fallen tree is. The scrunched tin foil, glued to the matting board, covered in caulking, engrave your bark. Voila, a nice big old tree trunk. Which might be a nice terrain obstacle. Okay, so we'll talk about next steps in just a second.